Hello everyone, welcome to the Crystaly Recap channel. The car raced along the country road, swerving from side to side. Inside sat the Sutton couple, who had been together for just over a year. The husband was terrified and couldn't bear to look at his beautiful wife while she begged him to stop. He promised to always love her but couldn't keep his promise. Seeing her true nature, he felt fear and attempted to escape, but she caught up with him. Constantly arguing, the couple crashed into a parked pickup by the road and the car exploded. The husband died in the explosion, but his wife emerged from the fire unscathed. She set out to find a new man who could love her for who she was. Norman was Mr. Sutton's financial advisor, so after his death, the bereaved widow came to him to sort out financial matters. Before her visit, Norman was talking to a colleague named Roy. Roy was eager to court Mrs. Sutton, finding her beautiful, but Norman found it unacceptable, as the widow had just buried her husband. The girl eavesdropped on their conversation and decided that Norman would become her new husband. When she entered the office, she saw a photo of his mother. To please him, she made herself look like this woman. When Norman saw the client, he couldn't take his eyes off her. Mrs. Sutton introduced herself as Addie, and they quickly hit it off, eventually marrying after some time. Furthermore, Addie introduced Norman's friend Dennis to her friend Barbara, who was also beautiful, and Dennis and Norman couldn't believe their luck. A year passed since their meeting, and Addie started worrying that Norman would leave her if she stopped being so beautiful. Norman always reassured her that they would always be together, even if Addie turned into a monster. One night he woke up and realized his wife wasn't beside him. He went down to the guest room and saw Addie working on the computer. Norman approached her to surprise her and decided to lick her shoulder, but upon touching her skin, he immediately recoiled. Norman felt as if the taste in Addie's was as though she were already dead. His words horribly saddened Addie, and she rushed into the shower in tears to wash away that taste. When Norman entered, he saw in the steamy mirror a creature instead of his wife. He squinted and wiped the mirror. At that moment, the monster disappeared, and the reflection of the beautiful Addie reappeared. In the morning, Norman refused breakfast. He hurried off to an important meeting, or at least that's what he told his wife. When Addie asked him for a goodbye kiss, Norman did so fearfully, afraid to taste that previous flavor again. However, it turned out even stranger, as he felt nothing, no taste or smell, as if there was no one there. Norman went to his doctor for an examination. The doctor checked him out and diagnosed that his health was fine, and all these observations regarding his wife were merely a result of emotional stress. After that, Norman went to his friend to share his feelings, but Dennis wasn't home. Barbara informed him that he had fled, saying many awful things. When Norman entered the house, he tried to turn on the lights, but all the bulbs were smashed. Barbara said it was Dennis's fault. After this encounter, Barbara went to Addie to remind her that the same fate awaited her. Soon, Norman would see her true nature and flee in horror. However, Addie refused to believe it. In the evening, Norman sat on the terrace when his wife approached him. He started a conversation about children, but Addie tried to avoid this topic as if she was even afraid to talk about offspring. They quickly dropped the subject and returned to the house. Then Norman again felt that awful smell, but only for a moment. Arriving at work, he asked Roy if he noticed any signs in his wife. However, Roy didn't fully understand what Norman wanted from him and couldn't help him. Addie was talking to Barbara, who had come to visit, and started to change her appearance, trying to find a new look for her next victim. Addie shared with Barbara that Norman truly loves her, and it's not about physical intimacy, so she won't have to change her appearance anymore. She'll be with Norman for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, Dennis called Norman and suggested meeting near the playground. There, he revealed that his wife is a monster, and creatures like her don't love children. That's why he tries to hide near playgrounds and other places where children play. Dennis mentioned that Barbara smelled strangely and looked horrifying, and then she appeared, only in a different form. But Dennis sees her true face and panics, fleeing. He ran onto the road, where he was hit by a car. Norman didn't understand anything, as his friend saw a stranger woman and panicked. However, something in Dennis's words seemed familiar to him, as he also felt that his wife smelled different. After the funeral, Norman and Adie came to support Barbara. Embracing her, Norman sniffed but felt nothing except the scent of perfume. Barbara informed him that she planned to sell the house and leave the city in search of happiness, but she hadn't decided where yet. Adie noticed that her husband suspected something and decided to distract him by putting him to bed. She tempted Norman, and he succumbed, forgetting about all the strange things that had been happening lately. However, when he hugged his wife, he felt something disgusting and pulsating instead of her skin. Norman pushed his wife away, but Adie tried to convince him that nothing had happened and she was still his beautiful wife. The next day, Norman went to the doctor again. He talked about the new, unpleasant sensations that arose when he touched his wife. However, the doctor said it was due to nerves. Norman felt unworthy of Adie. Moreover, he was troubled by a sense of guilt because he and Adie got together immediately after her husband's death. All of this turned into such behavior, and it will pass if Norman undergoes treatment with a psychoanalyst. Realizing that all these oddities about Adie existed only in his head, Norman breathed a sigh of relief. He bought flowers for his wife and returned home with a determined intention to apologize to her. However, he was greeted with a surprise party organized by Adie. She invited all of Norman's friends and colleagues, even the doctor he had recently visited. Roy was also there, and he thought Adie was simply wonderful for throwing a party for no reason. However, Norman began to suspect that it wasn't random. He started to suspect his wife of hiding something from him, and believed that the party was meant to surround Adie with witnesses to his strange behavior. Barbara also came to the party, only now she had changed her appearance. Adie introduced her to Norman. However, Norman wasn't interested in who else would join them. He drank wine and went out into the street. Roy came to support him, and Norman told him all his suspicions. They had never organized parties or invited guests except Barbara and Dennis, and suddenly there were many people in their house. Obviously, Adie did this for a reason, but Roy didn't want to listen to his colleague, so he returned to the house. There, they talked with Adie, and Roy confessed that he also wanted to find his ideal girl. He needed a beauty with whom he could have strong relationships, someone with whom he could grow old. Listening to him, Adie realized that Roy would be her next husband if Norman left her. After the guests dispersed, Norman confessed that his mind wasn't right. The doctor said that all these hallucinations existed only in his head. He apologized to Adie, and she forgave him. When she went to make sandwiches for Norman, he unpacked the gift that Barbara had brought. Inside was a matryoshka. When Norman took out a couple of figurines, he heard something dreadful stomping through the kitchen. Looking there, he saw a terrifying monster instead of his wife. However, a moment later, his normal Adie stood before him again. Norman decided that he was having hallucinations again, while Adie cried and ran into the bedroom. When her husband calmed down a bit and came to apologize, Adie was sitting in the dark room. She had smashed all the light bulbs so that Norman wouldn't see her true form. It was time to confess who she really was. She wanted Norman to decide if he wanted to continue being with her. Adie explained that she and Barbara were aliens whose spaceship had crashed, and they had lost the ability to return home. So they decided to stay on Earth and live among humans. They used their abilities to make people see them as beautiful women. However, if Adie or Barbara stayed close to one person for more than a year, that person would develop a kind of immunity to their influence, and men would start seeing them as disgusting aliens. After finishing her story, Adie reminded Norman that he promised to be with her even if she changed. Then she transformed, and Norman saw her true appearance. He horrifyingly rushed out of the room, but Adie started to pursue him. Poor Norman almost went insane, and he had to call an ambulance. While being taken to the hospital, Norman still saw Adie as a monster, while others saw an attractive woman in her. After some time, Adie waited for her new victim on the bridge. She changed her appearance to please Roy. He was out for a run, and upon seeing Adie, he decided to introduce himself. She said her name was Stacy, and when Roy offered her a run together, she agreed. Adie never lost hope that there would be someone who would love her true essence or wouldn't develop immunity to her abilities. Then she and Barbara could peacefully live on Earth. This is the end of the movie. That's all for today. Subscribe and like if you want more videos like this.